State lawmakers passed a new bill targeting juvenile crime. New today, we hear from the Senate president on the next steps. Car thefts continue to plague Baltimore residents. Our team looks how much they've increased since last year and examines why thieves are so likely to get away with it. Then city leaders move forward with a plan to revitalize Baltimore's Harbor Place. The changes you can vote on come November.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 4.
Does it concern you that the House's version also includes the carve-out for kids with handguns in the diversion process?
I believe our product is more appropriate.
The debate over how to address juvenile crime continues in Annapolis. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. I'm Kai Jackson.
And I'm Mary Bubala. Last night, the Senate passed a bill tackling juvenile justice in a late-night session.
Now, the bill passed with bipartisan support, although Republicans say they're not completely satisfied with it.
And this comes as we learn new details about the murder of a 20-year-old in Anne Arundel County. According to police, two teenagers, a 17 and an 18-year-old, have been charged in connection to that murder. Two other teenagers, a 15 and 17-year-old, were released. When police were called to the scene yesterday, they found the victim with multiple gunshot wounds. Investigators say he came out of his house and was shot by the suspects before they fled in a van, which had been stolen out of Baltimore City.
Car thefts have been an issue in Baltimore City. Baltimore police say more than 1,400 auto thefts have happened this year. We have team coverage this afternoon. Fox 45's Rebecca Pryor is digging into the ongoing car theft crisis and the latest data about how common this crime is becoming.
But we begin with Mackenzie Frost.
They just drove off in the car.
But even with so many incidents caught on camera, criminals rarely facing any consequences. At a press conference addressing the rise in crime last November, BPD announcing nearly 700 auto theft arrests. At the time, 9,300 cars had been stolen for a clearance rate of just 7%. Meaning, if your car is stolen, there's a 93% chance of the thieves never being caught.
Generally speaking, I would say that these drivers who've stolen a vehicle or are in a possession of a stolen vehicle just simply flee from the police, and that's the end of it.
Former Deputy Commissioner Jason Johnson explaining it's a difficult crime to solve.
No matter how one feels about the BPD's pursuit policy, it does allow offenses like stolen vehicles to just drive away and not pull over and be apprehended.
And even when a rare arrest is made, legal expert Jeremy Eldridge.
It's very difficult to prove factually that the individual that is later found with the vehicle weeks or months later is actually the individual that stole the car initially, because you need a victim or a witness to come forward and say, I saw this person on this date at this time steal this car, and identify them in.
Explaining convictions are just as hard to secure.
Because you need a victim or a witness to come forward and say, I saw this person on this date at this time steal this car, and identify them in court.
This car theft victim,
There's blood all in the car. He burned the whole roof. I mean, the car's total.
who asked we not share her name, claiming a thief broke into her Canton home, stole the keys to her Range Rover, and sped off with the car in the middle of the night.
He drove my car for a month like it was his.
According to charging documents, a routine traffic stop leading police to make an arrest. The suspect found with a knife, prescription pills, and a plastic bag with a substance suspected to be cocaine. But when taken to court, the only guilty charge, unauthorized removal of a motor vehicle. The suspect sentenced to just over 2 months behind bars and 3 years probation.
I mean, I really couldn't believe it. I thought the charges would be like grand theft auto. I mean, the car was worth $50,000.
According to Eldridge and Johnson, the lack of accountability is likely what's driving the soaring crime rates.
They're just very difficult crimes to investigate, frankly, despite the lack of complexity in the crime itself.
There's no certainty of consequences. In fact, the likelihood of consequences are very low. So Of course, that's the problem.
As car thefts in Baltimore City continue to show no signs of slowing down. Rebecca Pryor, Fox 45 News.
That brings us to our question of the day. Do you think the city is making any progress with the car theft issue? To make your voice heard, head to foxbaltimore.com/vote.
If you have a stolen car story or know somebody who's been impacted by the spike in auto thefts, we want to hear about it. Just scan the QR code on your screen, tell us what happened, or send an email to news@foxbaltimore.com.
The jury in the trial for Elliot Knox, the man accused of murdering BPD officer Kiana Holly, has yet to return a verdict. Alexa Ashwell is live at the courthouse where jurors have been deliberating this case all day. Alexa.
Yes, Kai, today the first full day of deliberations. The jury began discussing this case yesterday afternoon. So in total, they've been deliberating for about 8.5 hours now. Elliot Knox, 6 charges on the table. He's facing first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, and 4 firearms-related charges. Officials tell me the jury has been rather quiet. They haven't asked any questions. Of course, there is a good amount of evidence that they are going to be going through. Throughout this trial, the state introduced more than 80 pieces of evidence and called at least 18 witnesses to the stand. Key pieces include Knox's interview with BPD, including his confession to being there for both murders, to hiding those murder weapons, and when he named Trayvon Shaw, as the shooter. Surveillance footage from Officer Holly's murder scene and cell phone data placing both Knox and Shaw's phones near both murder scenes. The state also relying heavily on forensic evidence, including ballistics and DNA testing. As for the defense attorney Natalie Finnegar did not call any witnesses to the stand. Knox remained silent. He did not take the stand. Finnegar argued that Knox is guilty of accessory after the fact, to being there, to hiding the murder weapons, but not what the state has charged him with. So, Kai, Mary, it's 4:09 now. Yesterday, the judge wrapped up the jury by 5 p.m. So if we do have a verdict, it will be within the next hour. I'm going to walk back into the courtroom, and I'll have an update for you guys in just an hour. For now, reporting live in downtown Baltimore, Alexa Ashwell, Fox 45 News.
All right, good evening. We've had all the rain once again. We'll have more of that as we head through the daytime tomorrow, but at least we get to enjoy a mostly dry evening. Everything is still pretty damp, but the radar picture, as you can see, doesn't have much happening and will likely stay that way for the rest of the evening. That storm system producing all the rain continues to pull away, rushing into New England. Our next storm system is right back here, and we're going to be seeing our next chance for rainfall again as we head through tomorrow, but at least again, tonight, not so bad. Our temperatures have been on the cooler side. We're in the mid-50s, and we'll continue to see that dropping to the upper 40s tonight, but again, nice and dry. We could even be tracking a little bit of patchy fog tonight. We've got 2 more storm systems to come, the one that's going to hit tomorrow and another one to impact as we move to the weekend. We're going to track that for you, talk about your weekend rain chances in just a bit.
All right, Gerard, we'll talk with you then. Meantime, put the power of the Weather Authority Storm Center in your hands. Download the free WBFF Weather Authority app for your smartphone. Use our powerful Doppler radar to follow storms to your street. Go to your app store and search WBFF to get started.
It's the biggest day in the presidential primary, but the general election is already in full swing. I'm Atrell Nashar with what voters are saying on this Super Tuesday.
Conditions in the Gaza Strip reach new lows as the war rages on. The pleas from doctors on the conditions of local hospitals.
Plus, new developments in the controversy surrounding Georgia District Attorney Fani Willis, how it could impact Donald Trump's election interference case.
Fox 45 News, winner of 16 2022 Regional Emmy Awards, more than all other Baltimore news stations combined.
A live look across the country tonight. Voters in 16 states and one territory heading to the polls today for the primaries. Super Tuesday is almost always the first Tuesday in March. Hundreds of delegates are up for grabs for each party, but no candidate will be able to secure the nomination just yet. The earliest that could happen based on the math is next week for Trump or in 2 weeks for Biden. President Biden and former President Trump already looking ahead to the general election, and polls released in the last couple of days give an early sense of where voters stand. National correspondent Atra El-Nashar joins us live with a closer look at what they mean for each candidate. Atra, good evening.
Hey, good evening, Mary. You know, this Super Tuesday is unlike any other, and this general election is unlike any other. And with two unpopular candidates in President Biden and former President Trump, each campaign faces some serious headwinds. Democrats and Republicans lining up behind their respective candidates in what's essentially an early start to the general election. Polls out this week giving Democrats reason to be nervous about this rematch of 2020. In a New York Times Siena College poll, among voters who supported Biden in 2020, just 83% said they would vote for him again versus Trump if the election were held today, compared to 97% of Trump's 2020 supporters who say they'd vote for him again. Concerns about Biden's age and low approval on top issues like immigration and the economy, putting his supporters on the defensive.
What matters is how people vote, and we have consistently, as Democrats, overperformed polls.
I think Joe Biden has demonstrated that he'll beat Donald Trump, and he's going to beat him again.
In a memo this week, Doug Sosnick, political strategist and former advisor to President Clinton, puts public sentiment at the top of a list of challenges for Biden. He points to NBC polls showing a majority of voters think the country is headed in the wrong direction and don't feel confident their children's lives will be better than their own. Sosnick writes, not surprisingly, these attitudes have led the electorate to vote against whoever is in power in 10 out of the last 12 elections. In many ways, 2024 doesn't look like other elections.
This is really what our country's all about. We're going to bring it back.
There's a contingent of Americans known as double haters, voters who have negative views of Biden and Trump. The New York Times estimates they make up 19% of the electorate. Trump facing dozens of criminal accusations. According to the Times, 53% of registered voters think Trump has committed serious federal crimes. Among Trump supporters, 21% think he's committed crimes, but still plan to vote for him. Now, as with any presidential election, both candidates are going to have to find ways to appeal to moderate swing voters. And for President Biden, his State of the Union address on Thursday is expected to be his biggest opportunity to revive public opinion.
And Atra, we know sealing a presidential nomination is all about accumulating those delegates. What is the math looking like tonight?
Yeah, on the Republican side, tonight there are 865 delegates up for grabs across 15 states. And those 800-plus delegates account for more than a third of the party's delegates in total. So remember, a candidate needs 1,215 to seal the Republican nomination. And Trump's heading into tonight already with 273, according to the Associated Press, compared to Nikki Haley's 43. Unfortunately for her, the states where she's expected to perform the best tonight are essentially winner-take-all contests, like California, which has some more moderate Republican voters, and Virginia, which also has some more moderate, more educated Republican voters, and is an open primary, meaning she could get support from independents or more moderate Democrats who don't want a 2020 rematch.
All right, national correspondent Atra El-Nashar, thank you so much.
All right, good evening, everyone. The rain was around again today. It seems like we have just been putting this record on repeat. I sound like a broken record because we just keep seeing the rainfall day after day. Now, we had a couple days before, but here we go again. We're going to be talking more about it. First, let's get you through the evening. We've got a little bit of moisture just lingering on the ground, but nothing falling. 50s everywhere, so this is pretty much your typical weather pattern that we've gotten. But here it is. This is a very active one for this time of the year. Continuing to watch one storm pull away. It's impacting right over the middle of New York City right now, but we have the clouds lingering behind. Now, as we head into the next few days, more unsettled weather is going to just continue watch as we get another shot at rainfall, and this one's going to be Wednesday, then once again as we head into Friday with a small break. We're talking maybe late Thursday to Friday where we will not see the rainfall, but it just keeps rolling in with one storm after the other. So get ready to see more as we head into the weekend. I'm hoping it will not linger around as long for your Sunday once again, but don't expect temperatures to be anywhere close to what we had last weekend. It's going to be chillier as we head forward. All right, so future scan again, we're talking about our temperatures diving down a bit more. Tonight we'll be in the 40s, but the clouds will linger around to keep us right about there as we start your Wednesday. And there's the shower activity that will begin Wednesday. Here it is. We're going to have more rainfall for your daytime. Your commute may not be too bad, but throughout the day, expect more of that, and that could even linger into your evening a bit. Temperatures still only in the 50s, so we haven't changed much there. But once we get to Thursday, we might actually see a small return. We're talking upper 50s, perhaps 60 degrees for your afternoon. But clouds are going to be a little bit on the stubborn side. We have to get rid of those to really warm things up. But one thing that we just will not see a real major end to anytime soon is the rain chances. Wednesday, we still have it. Thursday, it still lingers. Friday may be the only dry day that we can almost guarantee here, where it looks like there's not even a chance much of anything. But Saturday, it's back and even lingering into your Sunday. So we're continuing to watch this. I know your car washes are just going to have to wait for a while, and we'll hopefully get 1 or 2 good days as we head into next week. So first of all, the amount of rain that we could get, another inch, perhaps a bit more, kind of depends. But we still got more soaking rain to come. But on your 7-day forecast, as we talked about, our temperatures are just going to be stepping down little by little. We've reached our near peak in the upper 50s today, tomorrow, as we've already seen 60s in the past here. But we're stepping down to some cooler air as we move into Saturday and Sunday. We may have a bit of a chillier blast coming by the early part of next week. But I'm hoping, thinking we're going to have a much better recovery as we head into next week. At least Tuesday's looking pretty good, and I'm hopeful that maybe we'll get more of a drier pattern to finally set up for everybody.
Well, the City Council approves 3 bills paving the way for Harbor Place redevelopment. Fox 45 News taking a closer look at the timeline.
I'm Kayla Gaskins. Coming up, how a new development in Georgia could impact Donald Trump's election interference case.
And now you can watch Fox 45 News for free anytime on Amazon Fire TV or Samsung TV Plus. Palestinian officials say an Israeli airstrike killed at least 17 people in southern Gaza today. Those deaths bring the total number of people who died in the last 24 hours to 97, according to Palestinian officials. In a statement, the Israeli military says it was carrying out targeted raids while also trying to move civilians out of the area. According to Gaza's health ministry, the latest fatalities bring the overall Palestinian death toll to more than 30,000 in the 5-month-long war. Well, talks to establish a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip have reportedly ended without a breakthrough. Egyptian officials told the Associated Press today the latest rounds of negotiations with Hamas have ended. Talks have been ongoing to try to implement a ceasefire and release some of the Israeli hostages before the start of Ramadan in less than a week. The war between Israel and Hamas has been going on now for almost 5 months, as we mentioned. Well, after visiting 2 hospitals in northern Gaza over the weekend, workers from the World Health Organization say children are dying of starvation. They also say they saw severe malnutrition and medical supply and fuel shortages. Officials say the hospitals are overwhelmed with patients, and a lack of electricity poses a threat to the neonatal and intensive care units, the NICUs. The WHO says it delivered nearly 10,000 liters of fuel to each hospital and medical supplies, but it is clear this aid is only a small amount of what they need.
Al-Auda hospitals considers one of the important and critical hospitals serving the populations in the northern Gaza. WHO and its partners will continue providing full support to Al-Auda hospitals along with the other hospitals in Gaza.
At one of those hospitals, 10 children died of starvation. 1 in 6 children under the age of 2 suffer from acute malnutrition in northern Gaza, according to the UN. Well, a rape crisis association in Israel is praising a recent United Nations report on discoveries of sexual violence by Hamas. The UN report says there are reasonable grounds that Hamas could have raped and sexually assaulted women in Israel during its October 7th attack on the country. The UN group who investigated the event for it says it found convincing information after interviewing released hostages. Now an Israeli association is commending the findings.
Actually, this is the first time that an international body acknowledges what has happened in Israel. There's a big denial in the world that sexual violence was used as a weapon of war. There's a horrible denial that Hamas terrorists actually raped, gang raped, and mutilated women and men. And this is the first time the big wide world is seeing that this is a fact, a horrific, horrible fact.
Hamas previously denied accusations that its members sexually tortured Israeli women. Well, coming up after the break, chaos at the southern border continues as February sees a rise in migrant crossings, the blame game between Republicans and Democrats. Plus, the court silenced a mother who spoke out about a juvenile rapist in a public school, the action she's preparing to take. The plan to redevelop Harbor Place is one step closer to voters. The City Council approved 3 bills last night, paving the way for the project. Fox 45's Maxine Stryker joins us live from Harbor Place with a closer look at what comes next. Maxine.
Well, Mary, the mayor is now expected to sign off on that charter amendment, meaning it will be on the ballot if that happens in November. And those we spoke with here today are hoping it brings more life to Harbor Place.
A vote to transform Baltimore's crown jewel passed with majority support last night.
This bill passed with a vote of 14-1. Please note that Councilman Dorsey is the only no vote. This bill is approved.
The trio of bills are set to overhaul a struggling Harbor Place.
When I was a kid, Harbor Place was very different. It did used to be a lot more livelier.
I came down here today for that sense of nostalgia. I do wish that we had more places to go right now, so I'm looking forward to whatever revitalization that we can have.
The $500 million project led by developer P. David Bramble of MCB Real Estate is expected to have a mix of retail, residential, and public space with hundreds of housing units, an amphitheater, plus trees and parks.
We will not stop until this project comes to fruition so that the world can see that Baltimore is back.
And while there is a lot of support from residents looking for Harbor Place to be what it once was,
it's needed. I'm looking forward to it.
I definitely would like to see it livened up a lot more.
There is opposition too, especially when it comes to the potential housing.
I support upgrading the harbor, but I do not support what they voted on.
A group called the Inner Harbor Coalition tells Fox 45 it agrees the space needs upgrades, but feels the current proposal is not the right fit for Baltimore.
All of us were shocked by this monstrosity of a project that we had no idea was coming down the pike.
In a statement today, they said in part they expected the city council bills would pass without any real debate. Telling Fox 45 the city council is simply rubber stamping this decision by Mayor Scott to turn over Harbor Place to a well-connected private developer.
Now, if that project is approved come November, again, it will be on the ballot if signed off by Mayor Scott as a charter amendment. It would be years until the project would be complete here in Harbor Place. Reporting live from Harbor Place, Maxine Stryker, Fox 45 News.
2 mothers who blew the whistle and alerted the public that a juvenile rapist was attending a Maryland public school may soon be silenced by the courts.
As Project Baltimore's Chris Papps explains, some say this is an assault on the freedom of press and the public's right to know.
The degree of secrecy the judge is pursuing here is troublingly overbroad.
Grayson Clary is with the Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press, a nonprofit based in Washington, D.C. that advocates for the First Amendment rights of journalists.
This seems like a situation in which there might be a valid challenge to the gag order.
This has consumed me. I wouldn't wish what we have gone through on my worst enemy.
Project Baltimore, for the past 2 months, has been telling the stories of these 2 mothers who feel Maryland's juvenile justice system has failed them. Now, Fox 45 has learned the Public Defender's Office is trying to silence these mothers and stop them from talking about the juvenile they say sexually abused their daughters.
The Supreme Court has often said that gag orders like these are among the most serious and least tolerable infringements on First Amendment rights.
Here's the backstory. In late December in Harford County, a 15-year-old pleaded to a second-degree rape charge involving this mother's now 4-year-old daughter. But he was not sent to juvenile detention. Instead, he received probation and counseling for sex offense-specific treatment. The teen then returned to class at Patterson High School in Baltimore City. And because he's a juvenile, families were not told that a rapist was in the school building.
Nope. They don't have a clue.
The victim's mother came to Project Baltimore to blow the whistle and alert the public.
I know if it was my child in a school with a convicted rapist, I would want to know.
Shortly after, we spoke with a second mother in Baltimore County who said her daughter was sexually abused in April of 2022 by the same teen.
I'm very angry. Very.
Late last month, the 15-year-old was due in court to face charges in the Baltimore County case. Sources close to the investigation tell us he was expected to enter a plea to a lesser charge. But that did not happen. After nearly 2 years of waiting, the day her daughter's case was supposed to go to court, the Baltimore County mother learned the defense is trying to silence her. The public defender filed a motion requesting an order controlling conduct, essentially a gag order, to stop the mother from speaking about this court case. Fox 45 does not have a copy of the motion, but according to state law, a juvenile court judge may direct, restrain, or otherwise control the conduct of any person if that judge finds that that person may be harmful to a child over whom the court has jurisdiction.
Even then, they need to be narrowly tailored to preserve folks' rights to speak about matters of public concern. And from what I understand, it seems difficult to see how those bars have been cleared here.
To say that this has been a nightmare is an understatement.
A judge has not yet ruled on the motion against the Baltimore County mother, but Project Baltimore has learned the mother of the Harford County victim was placed under an order controlling conduct in February by Baltimore City Judge Charles Blomquist. Juvenile court proceedings have different rules when it comes to confidentiality, giving judges more leeway in deciding who can attend and what details are made public. Under the order, if the Harford County mother talks to Project Baltimore again, a judge could impose penalties, making the secretive juvenile justice process even more secretive. These mothers feel like the juvenile justice system failed. And they went to the media to tell the public that they feel the system failed, and now they're no longer able to do that.
The public's right to understand what unfolds in judicial proceedings is supposed to be a right that you have for good or ill, not just to narrate when things are going well, but also to highlight when they're going badly. And the degree of secrecy in place here seems pretty troubling to us from that perspective.
Before the control conduct requests, these mothers made an impact by coming forward. Sources tell Project Baltimore the 15-year-old has been removed from Patterson and is now learning virtually. Meanwhile, lawmakers in Annapolis are currently working to pass a new state law banning juvenile sex offenders from attending school in person. Project Baltimore received a statement from the Snyder Law Group, which is representing both mothers in a potential civil lawsuit. It said, all layers of protection have failed these two children and potentially others. What has transpired is horrid. It is egregious. Maybe not now, but these mothers will get their opportunity to have their voices heard in a court of law before a jury. I'm Chris Papst, and this is Project Baltimore.
And now to an update out of Georgia. That's where defense lawyers want to hear from a new witness in the effort to have District Attorney Fani Willis removed from the 2020 election interference case. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins reports.
As the fate of Georgia District Attorney Fani Willis remains up in the air,
I'm not a hostile witness. I very much want to be.
A prosecutor from a neighboring county has now offered to testify against her. Defense lawyers claim Cindy Lee Yeager has new important information regarding the timeline of Fani Willis's romantic relationship with the man she appointed to the high-profile, lucrative special counsel position, Nathan Wade. According to the filing, Yeager grew concerned when watching the testimony of Wade's former business partner, Terrence Bradley.
Did you lie to Miss Merchant when you told her facts about Mr. Wade and Miss Willis's relationship?
The court documents claim Bradley was misleading on the stand, contradicting what he told Yeager in person, which was that Wade and Willis started dating in 2019, well before she appointed Wade as special counsel.
Gossip versus what you're willing to say under oath are two radically different things. What you say under oath and therefore might be perjuring yourself you're going to be much more careful than what you say in a text message to a colleague or a friend.
Yeager was also reportedly present for a phone call where Willis warned Terrence Bradley to keep quiet about her affair with Wade. The timeline of this romantic relationship is crucial to the push to have Willis removed as the prosecutor for the Georgia election interference case against Trump and his co-defendants.
There are several legal issues to sort through, several factual determinations that I have to make.
During closing arguments last Friday, the judge said he hoped to rule in the next 2 weeks.
So I will be taking the time to make sure that I give this case the full consideration it's due.
Meanwhile, a Georgia State Senate committee subpoenaed the defense lawyer, Ashley Merchant, who uncovered the possible ethical violations. They want her testimony in their own investigation into Fani Willis. I'm Kayla Gaskins reporting.
After dropping in January, the number of migrants crossing the southern border increased last month. According to CBS News, Border Patrol agents cataloged 140,000 migrant apprehensions last month in between ports of entry. That's up from 124,000 in January. This after Republicans in the Senate basically shot down a bipartisan border bill, something the Biden administration says is a necessary solution.
This system has been broken for decades, and we have a bipartisan solution that will deliver much needed resources and much needed changes to the broken system.
GOP lawmakers argue the president has all but ignored the border throughout his 4-year term and that the border bill doesn't go far enough. They believe a Republican president can use already established laws to secure the border.
Well, still ahead, a big day in Annapolis as top prosecutors look to address organized crime in Maryland. The bill's being proposed.
Mayor Brandon Scott testifies in the state's capital the push to continue Project Core in Baltimore and the impact it's already having on vacant homes.
I'm taking a good look at the rain chances that we have for tomorrow, for the weekend. Also taking a look at this. What is going on with the temperatures out there? Are we going to get some big changes to come our way? The answer is most likely yes. We're going to talk about what this is going to mean for us in the weeks ahead coming up.
Back to session 2024 coverage. For months, we've been telling you about the growing number of car thefts across the state. Now there's an effort to crack down on this kind of organized crime. Brad Bell from our sister station in Washington, D.C. is live in Annapolis with details. Brad, we understand a lot of these crimes tend to involve teens and young kids.
Oh, yeah, Kai, look, we've been talking about it, right, for a very long time, the spike in juvenile crime. And there is a concerted effort here to sort of tweak the juvenile justice reform laws to try to hold kids who do crimes a little bit more accountable. But this new bill that's being talked about is a little bit different. It aims to hold accountable those adults who are getting kids to do crime for them. Well, apparently we don't have this story that we prepared, but I can tell you about it a little bit. It's HB 1063, and it is a bill that sort of expands the organized crime statutes so that prosecutors, and in this case it was State's Attorney Aisha Braveboy from Prince George's County and Ivan Bates from Baltimore City down here advocating. They say, look, when an adult sends kids out to steal crimes, bring them back to a chop shop, they need to be held accountable. They say doing that is the definition of organized crime. So they want to get this bill passed. They believe it'll be a deterrent. Now, we're going to be back at 5 with much more on this story, and I got to tell you, I did some digging into the numbers. There's some encouraging news in Prince George's County right now, where carjackings are down 20% for the year and auto theft down 25%. But in Baltimore City, the exact opposite is true. We got some new numbers from the Baltimore City Police Department. This time last year, there were about 800 stolen cars, fewer than 800 stolen cars. It's already almost 1,400, a huge increase. So that's one of the things that Mr. Bates and Ms. Braveboy want to attack. And again, we'll be back at 5 with a little bit more on this story. In Annapolis, Brad Bell, Fox 45 News.
Brad, thank you. House Bill 1063 isn't the only one Bates and Braveboy are pushing. House Bill 555 calls on the Department of Juvenile Services to report any juvenile who violates GPS home monitoring within 24 hours of the violation to the state's attorney's office, the courts, and the defense counsel. They're also supporting House Bill 927, which calls on any juvenile charged with crimes of violence, gun-related crimes, or stolen auto crimes to be held and to see a juvenile judge within 24 hours. This would include the state's attorney's office, DJS, the parent, and defense counsel. Baltimore City Mayor Brandon Scott is in Annapolis testifying before the House Appropriations Committee in support of House Bill 1334. That bill extends funding for Project Core and its work in the city to address the vacant home issue.
There is a movement and a renaissance building in the city of Baltimore across every single neighborhood. But we know that this renaissance would not have been possible without the support of Project Core, which since 2016 has helped eliminate more than 5,000 blighted properties in Baltimore City. As we stand here today, Baltimore City has its lowest amount of vacant properties in 20 years. And we know we can and will take that even further.
Well, those supporting the bill point to the more than 13,000 vacant homes in Baltimore City, saying Project Core is essential to getting these under control.
All right, if you did not love today, I don't blame you, okay? We had a great Monday with temperatures in the mid-60s. We had sunshine. What happened? Where did it go? I wish I could tell you, but it is not something that likes to stick around. Once you start to like it, it just kind of fades away so quickly. Now let's look outside. It's still a pretty cloudy, damp day. You're looking actually at one of our visitor ships here in town, by the way. This is the Peruvian ship BAP Union, and it's been in town just to kind of hang out and give everyone a tour. It's not been the greatest weather to go out and view it, but I know it's around here for only a short time, so get out there while you can, when you can. And you can see it just hanging alongside the Constellation. So right now, 50s across the area. Marshall, BWI Airport, 54 degrees, but it's still in the low 50s. Annapolis, Bel Air. Our storm system continues to just slowly pull away, lingering clouds behind, but at least the rain is now pushed out of the way, bringing all that mess over there towards New England and the Northeast. Now, we are not anywhere near done with our rain chances. We've got 2 more systems to go through as we are seeing it. The first or I should say the next, arrives as early as tomorrow. We're only getting about an 18-hour window of dry time before we're back to the rainfall. So tomorrow morning, you're likely going to begin to see it. There it is for Wednesday, and even into your Thursday morning, we're going to see some chance of precipitation here. We're talking rain as we move through Thursday, but we could get a full day of dry weather on Friday before the next system behind that one arrives, just in time for the weekend. So Friday may be just no problem, but it looks like your Saturday is going to be more of an issue. Those rain chances we're talking about, and it could be pretty significant as we move through tomorrow. Thursday, a little more spotty. We'll say a few showers, but Friday, nice and dry. Saturday looks to be scattered, possibly more widespread. We'll keep an eye. That tick may go up one more as we head a little bit later on. We'll see how the new data shapes up. But Sunday, still a stray shower on the table here. Maybe not completely dry, but not a complete soaking washout either. All right, so totals for rainfall. We're still talking another at least 3/4 of an inch to an inch, maybe even an inch and a half. Kind of depends on whether we get hit with the cores of it. But here's some good news. Our temperatures have been above average. They continue to be above average. We're not really feeling it, but our average is around 50 degrees for highs, and we're likely going to continue that in the coming days. And we will get one cool down to come our way as we head into Monday, but it's not going to last long. We're likely going to see it return to above average even beyond that next week. So we've got a lot of good news coming. If you're looking for some spring weather, it is on the way. We just have to wait it out. Until then, rain showers coming until Sunday.
All right, Gerard, thank you. Coming up at 5 o'clock, the biggest day for the 2024 presidential primary is underway as 16 states and 1 territory cast their votes.
For the first time ever, you'll be able to purchase birth control pills over the counter in just a few weeks. I'm Janae Bowens in Washington with a look at why not everyone is on board with this.
For the first time in the United States, women of all ages will be able to buy over-the-counter birth control pills starting this month. It is a win for reproductive activists, but others say it'll do more harm than good. National correspondent Janae Bowens has a look at the controversy.
In the matter of weeks, women will be able to buy over-the-counter birth control pills. The news is getting a mixed reaction.
I feel a little caution about that. 12 years old, 14, something like that, would be able to just walk in and get it.
I think it's important that kids have resources for safe family planning. That way, if anything happens, they can be prepared and have a choice in the matter.
The controversial pill is called Opal. It works as a mini pill using only the hormone progestin. The manufacturer says if it's taken properly, it can be up to 98% effective at preventing pregnancy. You'll soon be able to buy it at pharmacies and online for around $20 for a 1-month supply. Dr. Jeffrey Singer with the Cato Institute says it's a win.
Women can get the mini pill over the counter without a prescription. That's just what I call a mini step in the right direction.
Emma Waters with the Heritage Foundation thinks women will try to use the birth control to self-medicate other issues. She says this one-size-fits-all approach doesn't work.
So we want to keep birth control with doctors, not as an over-the-counter available drug. And then second, we really just want to emphasize expanding women's health care so that they're receiving the in-depth diagnostic care that they need in order to make the best decisions for themselves.
Women's fertility is at the center of so many national conversations right now, from birth control to IVF, and the abortion pill mifepristone is set to be made available this month with a prescription at CVS and Walgreens pharmacies in some states. Now, the Supreme Court is expected to decide whether to restrict access to it by July. In Washington, I'm Janae Bowens.
Coming up on Fox 45 News at 5 o'clock, city leaders stay tight-lipped about Safe Streets, why it's a struggle to get any information about the program despite public records requests. The Senate passes a new bill to tackle juvenile crime in Maryland. We take a closer look at what comes next. Both houses in Annapolis have passed legislation targeting juvenile crime. What the next steps will look like as lawmakers try to move forward on a final version.
Jury deliberations continue in the trial of the man accused of murdering a Baltimore police officer. We'll have a live report bringing the latest updates from court.
We will not stop until this project comes to fruition so that the world can see that Baltimore is back.
Big new plans to revitalize Harbor Place are one step closer to reality. Closer look at the timeline as residents voice thoughts on their plan.
Live
from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 5.
Does it concern you that the House's version also includes the carve-out for kids with handguns in the diversion process?
I believe our product is more appropriate.
Well, the time for compromise is now as the debate over how to address juvenile crime continues in Annapolis. Good evening, everybody. I'm Mary Bubala.
And I'm Kai Jackson. Last night, the Senate passed a bill tackling juvenile justice in a late-night session.
That's right. The bill passed with bipartisan support, although Republicans say they are not completely satisfied. Despite some disagreement, this does mean both the House and the Senate have successfully passed their own plans.
Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost continues to track these proposals and joins us live from the State House with a new timeline for the legislation. Mackenzie.
Yeah, Kai and Mary, so we know the biggest difference between both the House and the Senate version really centers around how lawmakers plan to handle some of the youngest offenders in Maryland. And now it looks like reconciliation between these two options could happen sooner rather than later.
Has everyone recorded their vote?
The day after passing one of the biggest priorities this session,
Long day, good day. We got through a lot of stuff.
Senate President Bill Ferguson outlining the next steps for how Maryland lawmakers plan to tackle juvenile crime.
It will probably be soon after crossover. We want to kind of dispose of this issue and move forward as urgently and thoughtfully as possible.
Crossover day, March 18th, meaning if a bill has not made it to the other chamber by this deadline, it's likely dead. Getting to the bottom of what plan will prevail remains an uphill battle. Right now, the House allows kids between 10 and 12 years old to be taken to a diversionary program the first time they're arrested for stealing a car or possessing a gun. The Senate, however, gives the Department of Juvenile Services the chance to deal with kids with guns, even that young, right away. But for young car thieves in the Senate version, they would go through the Child in Need of Supervision or SINS petition process. SINS petitions are court-ordered programs.
I have actually become increasingly focused on the SINS process as a viable mechanism for impacting young people in a really significant way.
Does it concern you that the House's version also includes the carve-out for kids with handguns in the diversion process?
I believe our product is more appropriate.
Senate President Bill Ferguson not indicating if he's going to allow a bill like the House's plan to move forward. Right now, bipartisan support for both plans growing, even if some Republicans don't think the bill goes far enough. Senate Minority Leader Steve Hershey voting for the bill Monday night.
Again, this is a step, but it's certainly not a leap. We have a lot more work to do when it comes to public safety.
One of the two state senators voting against the plan, Senator Jill Carter from Baltimore City, Tuesday morning telling Fox 45 News she doesn't believe the bill is even necessary.
And so much of this is a response to perception and not reality, not factual based.
But for the people who have had their cars stolen by kids,
Just stop doing it.
Have been attacked by juveniles,
I could have lost my son that night. It just doesn't make any sense.
Or even parents who have all but begged lawmakers to help them hold their young kids accountable, these proposed changes to the juvenile justice system are welcomed. Now, depending on who you talk to, these proposals could end up in a conference committee where those differences are figured out and a path forward is found. Then, only then, after those amendments are made, will we see another round of votes from the House and the Senate, and then potentially sending this bill to Governor Wes Moore for consideration. We're live at the State House. Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
Mackenzie, thank you. And while the juvenile crime bill is making progress, several other crime-focused bills don't seem to be getting anywhere. The Violent Firearms Offender Act would crack down on some gun crimes and put stricter penalties on repeat offenders. Republicans, including former Governor Larry Hogan, have pushed for this bill for several years in a row. However, the bill hasn't had a hearing since January. The Pava Marie LePere Act, which would limit early release from prison for violent convicted sex offenders, is still in committee. And the Department of Juvenile Services Transparency Act is also still in committee. It would require DJS to report to the General Assembly with certain information regarding the number of shootings by juveniles under the department's supervision.
Now, if you feel your juvenile crime concerns aren't being heard, you can reach out to your lawmakers. House Speaker Adrian Jones and Senate President Bill Ferguson have two of the most powerful voices in Annapolis. Their phone numbers and email addresses are on your screen. The jury in the trial for Elliot Knox, the man accused of murdering Baltimore police officer Kiana Holley, and civilian Justin Johnson, has wrapped up for the day without a verdict.
And Fox 45's Alexa Ashwell joins us live outside the courthouse after a day of waiting. Alexa.
Yes, Kai, Mary, after about 7 hours of deliberations, the judge has sent the jury home for the day and instructed them to come back tomorrow morning. The jury began discussing this case yesterday afternoon. So in all, they've been deliberating on this case for about 9.5 hours. Elliot Knox facing 6 charges. These are the charges in question: first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, and 4 firearms-related charges. The judge instructed the jury to really take their time and review any evidence. The state throughout this trial introducing more than 80 pieces of evidence and calling at least 18 witnesses to the stand. Key pieces include Knox's interview with BPD, his confession to being there for both murders, to hiding the weapons, and when he named Trayvon Shaw as the shooter. Surveillance footage from Officer Holley's murder scene and cell phone data. The state also relying heavily on forensic evidence, ballistics, and DNA testing, including on weapons and shell casings. The defense calling no witnesses. Elliot Knox also remaining silent, opting not to testify. Defense attorney Natalie Finnegar arguing her client guilty of accessory after the fact to being there, to hiding the murder weapons, but not to what the state has charged him with. Back out here live, the judge releasing the jury just minutes ago, instructing them to come back at 9:15 tomorrow morning. They will resume deliberations, and we, of course, will be in the courtroom. Reporting live in downtown Baltimore, Alexa Ashwell, Fox 45 News.
Alexa, thank you. Fox 45 News has been in the courtroom every day since the trial started. For a closer look at what's happened so far, head to our website, foxbaltimore.com.
This bill passed with a vote of 14-1. Please note that Councilman Dorsey is the only no vote. This bill is approved.
The plan to redevelop Harbor Place is one step closer to reality. The City Council approved 3 bills last night, paving the way for the project to start. Fox 45's Maxine Stryker joins us live from Harbor Place right now with a closer look at what comes next. Maxine?
Kai, the mayor is now expected to sign off on this charter amendment, meaning it would go to the voters and be on the ballot in November. Now, the trio of bills are set to overhaul a struggling Harbor Place, the $500 million project led by developer David Bramble of MCB Real Estate is expected to have a mix of retail, residential, and public space with hundreds of housing units, an amphitheater, plus trees and parks. People we spoke with today are supportive of the plan.
I came down here today for that sense of nostalgia. I do wish that we had more places to go right now, so I'm looking forward to whatever revitalization that we can have. It's needed. I'm looking forward to it.
I definitely would like to see it livened up a lot more.
Now, of course, with any project, there is some opposition as well. A group called the Inner Harbor Coalition tells Fox 45 they agree that the space does need an upgrade. They just don't like the plan. In a statement today, they said in part they expected the city council bills would pass without any real debate, telling Fox 45 the city council is simply rubber stamping this decision by Mayor Scott to turn over Harbor Place to a well-connected private developer. If this was all approved after that ballot in November, it would take years for the project to be complete here at Harbor Place. Reporting live in Baltimore, Maxine Stryker, Fox 45 News.
There's a major endorsement for Senate candidate David Trone following a day of service with employees at BWI Thurgood Marshall Airport. 2 labor unions, SEIU 32BJ and SEIU 500, announced their support for the Senate hopeful.
Yeah, the unions are some of the largest in the U.S. with more than 200,000 workers across the nation. Trone says he is more than happy to have them backing his campaign.
We're very excited to have SEIU on the team. This is probably one of the most influential, if not the most influential union, election after election. It's the folks in purple, always in purple, all over the polls, all working the street, and it's their involvement that's going to get us over the top to beat Larry Hogan, who has beat us Democrats twice, and we can't let that happen a third time.
Trone also says today allowed him to understand the current challenges workers are facing. Well, right now you're taking a live look at Towson, the Inner Harbor, and our weather radar tracking conditions in our region. On your drive to work this morning, you may have gotten caught up in some on and off showers, but it has cleared up since then. But guess what? The rain is going to come back. Let's check in with Chief Meteorologist Gerard Jabali for the latest. Gerard.
Are you guys tired of hearing me talk about it? You have to be. My goodness, we can't get a break for more than maybe 24 hours. And it looks like the longest stretch of nice weather we had was Sunday into Monday. I hope you soaked it in, as I was trying to say, because we are getting soaked in rainfall just about every day since then. So let's talk about this a little bit. Outside right now, it looks pretty good, but you know, it's dry. The clouds are still lingering around. 54 degrees. At least we're not having to deal with anything on our commute home this evening, and we won't. Right now, again, the radar continues to show clear conditions here as it continues to push off to the north and east. So there's our storm system moving out the way, but you could look down to the south and west. There's the next one already showing up, and we will be seeing our chances for rain going up here in just the coming days. So I should say coming hours, just by tomorrow we'll have it. We've got more systems other than that one, and we're going to be going through the amount of rain that we're going to have, the chances of it for the weekend. But also I got some good news. Spring is starting to show up in a few places in our data, and you might like what we have to show you in just a bit. We're going to go through the temperatures that we could see not just this week, but next week, and it's looking pretty good if you're a spring lover like me. Okay.
Gerard, I am one. Thank you. We look forward to seeing that. Put the power of the Weather Authority Storm Center in your hands. Download the free WBFF Weather Authority app for your smartphone. Use our powerful Doppler radar to follow storms to your street. Go to your app store and search WBFF to get started.
Well, digging for answers in the Safe Streets program, the information that the city still refuses to disclose.
Baltimore's car theft crisis continues. A closer look at the numbers and why experts say thieves are likely to get away with it.
It's the biggest day in the presidential primary, but the general election is already in full swing. I'm Atrell Nashar with what voters are saying on this Super Tuesday.
Well, a live look across the nation tonight as voters in 16 states and one territory head to the polls. Super Tuesday is almost always the first Tuesday in March. Hundreds of delegates are up for grabs for each party, but no candidate will be able to secure the nomination just yet. President Biden and former President Trump are already looking ahead to the general election, and polls released in the last couple of days are giving an early sense of where voters stand. National correspondent Atra El-Nashar joins us live with a closer look at what they mean for each candidate. Atra?
Yeah, good evening, Mary. We may never see a Super Tuesday like this again, where we're essentially already in a general election, barring something totally unexpected happening. But that doesn't mean that President Biden and former President Trump are going to have an easy time through November. Those polls you mentioned are indicating where voters stand, and they tell us that each campaign is facing some serious headwinds.
Democrats and Republicans lining up behind their respective candidates in what's essentially an early start to the general election. Polls out this week giving Democrats reason to be nervous about this rematch of 2020. In a New York Times Siena College poll, among voters who supported Biden in 2020, just 83% said they would vote for him again versus Trump if the election were held today, compared to 97% of Trump's 2020 supporters who say they'd vote for him again. Concerns about Biden's age and low approval on top issues like immigration and the economy, putting his supporters on the defensive.
What matters is how people vote, and we have consistently, as Democrats, overperformed polls.
I think Joe Biden has demonstrated that he'll beat Donald Trump, and he's going to beat him again.
In a memo this week, Doug Sosnick, political strategist and former advisor to President Clinton, puts public sentiment at the top of a list of challenges for Biden. He points to NBC polls showing a majority of voters think the country is headed in the wrong direction and don't feel confident their children's lives will be better than their own. Sosnick writes, not surprisingly, these attitudes have led the electorate to vote against whoever is in power in 10 out of the last 12 elections. In many ways, 2024 doesn't look like other elections.
This is really what our country's all about. We're going to bring it back.
There's a contingent of Americans known as double haters, voters who have negative views of Biden and Trump. The New York Times estimates they make up 19% of the electorate. Trump facing dozens of criminal accusations. According to the Times, 53% of registered voters think Trump has committed serious federal crimes. Among Trump supporters, 21% think he's committed crimes, but still plan to vote for him.
Now, as with any presidential election, both candidates are going to have to find ways to appeal to moderate swing voters. And for President Biden, his State of the Union address on Thursday is expected to be his biggest opportunity to revive public opinion.
And Atra, Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley heading into the night. It's going to be a tough one with only 43 delegates compared to Trump's 273. What's she up against then tonight?
Well, Haley says she'll stay in this race as long as she's competitive. But from a delegate perspective, Mary, she's never been competitive. But if you look at her vote counts in New Hampshire and South Carolina, her support is not negligible. So even if Trump were to walk away from Super Tuesday with every single delegate up for grabs tonight, he still wouldn't be technically at that 1,215 needed to secure the nomination. But he'd be very close. And there's another batch of primaries next week.
All right, we will continue to watch it. National correspondent Atra El-Nashar live for us tonight in D.C. Thank you.
All right, let's talk about what we have coming. I'm going to get through the beginning of this weathercast, just showing you very briefly what's going on because we've got a lot to talk about more towards the future here. 50s across the area. That is pretty much just a few degrees above average. The rainfall that we had, of course, did move out of the area pretty quickly, and by around 2 o'clock, we were dry despite what was still sitting on the ground. So our storm system's pulling away. We've got another one coming up right behind it, and we're going to be talking about what that one is going to bring, plus what our temperatures are going to be doing in the next couple of weeks here. So here we are. We have that unsettled weather pattern just going to continue, but we'll see one storm system going by on Wednesday, lingering a bit into your Thursday, and then another one comes in as we move into Saturday. We get one dry day here, I think, in the next 4 or 5 days. That will be Friday, and then we're back to the rainfall Saturday, which could even linger a bit into your Sunday. So there's rain chances, as we've been showing here, the next 5 days, one dry day out of the total here. But it looks like the best days to see the rainfall are going to be tomorrow and again on Saturday with some lingering chances behind. All right, let's talk about a little bit of things. One of those is, of course, the rainfall we've had. The last 5 days, nearly an inch, inch and a half of rain. We're going to tack on to that another inch to inch and a half of rainfall as we move into Saturday. While that seems a little bit depressing, let's take a look at some temperatures. If you're a spring lover, we're still above the average. Our average is around 50, 51 degrees, and we're still there, believe it or not. And as we move through the next several days, we're going to continue to stay in that realm, maybe about 5 to 7 degrees above the average. We get a brief shot of cooler air to come through as we make our way to early next week, but it should not last too long. That's the good news. Take a look at the temperature outlook beyond. We're likely still going to be above the average as we move into the next week, which will be getting closer and closer to the official start of spring. But I've noticed that everything is starting to kind of pop up around here. We're starting to see those trees budding. We're starting to see flowers blooming. I'm looking forward to seeing some springtime temperatures, some springtime flowers all together. So I think we've got mostly good news going into next week. Well, we've got to get rid of all this rain and all this cooler air, even though it is above the average still. So rain showers again tomorrow. We're in the upper 50s tomorrow. Thursday, we'll be in the mid-50s Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We take a little bit more of a dip. There you see. On Monday, as I showed you, just a few degrees below the average or near it, and then we're right back up into it again. We're likely going to see warmer than average temperatures as we move into next week, and I'm hoping we'll be a little bit quieter where we don't have as much rain. We can actually enjoy it.
Well, coming up, 2 top prosecutors head to Annapolis to address organized crime in Maryland. A closer look at the legislation being proposed.
TikTok troubles. I'm Christine Frizzell with a look at some alarming new warnings about one of the most popular social media platforms in the country.
Lawmakers in both parties can't seem to come to an agreement on what to do about TikTok, despite bipartisan agreement about the threat it poses to the nation. National correspondent Christine Frizzell has a closer look at the new round of warnings.
Today I made easily the most expensive plate of pasta I've ever made.
It's a platform that seems to offer something for everyone. But concerns in Washington are accelerating rapidly.
If I could really do magic, look, 3, 2, 1.
Not about magic or makeup, but about manipulation, since TikTok is owned by a Chinese company.
They believe that this medium is the gateway to sort of picking the lock to getting access to young people and persuading the way that they view the world.
Author Peter Schweitzer details evidence of China's campaign of influence in his new book, Blood Money, a chief strategy magnifying existing divisions in the United States.
They create thousands, if not millions, of fake media accounts on social media in the United States, posing as Americans. Half of them essentially say America's a racist society. The other half say, I only like white people.
1/3 of adults under 30 now report they regularly get their news from TikTok, up from 9% in 2020. Perhaps a key factor in President Biden setting up an account.
You got to take a look at the other guy. He's about as old as I am.
Despite calling it a national security threat.
To allow a company that is owned by ByteDance, which is beholden to the Chinese Communist Party, to be the dominant news platform for the next generation of Americans, I think borders on national suicide.
Top officials with ByteDance deny it's collecting data on Americans, but most lawmakers don't buy it, with a threat to ban TikTok if it's not sold to an American company. Still, there is no legislation ready to be passed, despite bipartisan agreement about the threat it poses.
We would never have allowed CBS, ABC, NBC to be owned by the Soviet Union in the 1960s. And that is, I think, if anything, understating the degree of influence that we are seeing right now.
Alarm bells from lawmakers. The campaign of influence is already being carried out on a platform they worry may be too big and too popular to rein in. I'm Christine Frizzell reporting.
And that brings us to our national question of the day. Are you concerned that TikTok is a national security threat to the U.S.? So far, 88% of those who voted say yes. To make your voice heard, head to foxbaltimore.com/vote. Click on the Pulse tab. If you tried to log onto Facebook or Instagram this morning, you may have noticed some issues. Meta's platforms went down for hundreds of thousands of users due to what the company is calling a technical issue. At least 500,000 Facebook users reported issues logging in or accessing the site. Some users found they had been logged out of their Facebook accounts. Others got notifications on Instagram that something went wrong and their feeds could not be loaded. Threads and Facebook Messenger also went down. A Meta spokesperson says the outage was able to be resolved within 2 hours. Well, still ahead as car thefts continue to skyrocket across the country and the city, a very low number of those crimes are being solved. A closer look at the cases being closed and why criminals rarely face consequences. Fox 45 continues our investigation into the Safe Streets program. Coming up after the break, a closer look at the information the city refuses to give out to us. Getting information from leaders inside City Hall about safe streets continues to be a bit of a struggle. Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost continues to investigate the city's gun violence intervention program, asking lots of questions, not always getting the answers or information that you want. Mackenzie joins us live now from Annapolis with more.
Yeah, Mary, that's right. You know, our viewers know we've been investigating safe streets for more than 2 years now. And we know that the city has contracts with 2 nonprofits, LifeBridge Health and Catholic Charities, to operate the 10 different safe streets locations all across Baltimore, right? And in those contracts are requirements that the city, as well as the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, or MONSE, has to keep track of how the safe streets workers are doing and what they're doing, as well as tracking the progress. Some of the requirements in those contracts include keeping track of daily logs for the safe streets workers, the progress reports, as well as keeping track of how many job referrals or service referrals these safe streets employees are making to community members in their respective safe street zones. We've sent emails, we have sent public records requests, all asking for this information, but so far the city has not provided all of it. Now, taxpayer watchdog David Williams argues that if there's nothing to hide within the Safe Streets program, the city deserves to hand over this information, and taxpayers deserve to know what's going on, especially when they're the ones footing the bill for this program.
All city council members should be concerned about the lack of information that's coming out of City Hall and coming out of Safe Streets. And without the information, we're left in the dark. We just don't know. If Safe Streets is not providing this information, that is a bigger problem.
Now, coming up tonight at 10, we'll take a deeper dive into the data that we're requesting, what information the city has not provided, and potentially when we could see some of this information come to light. We're live tonight. Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
Mackenzie, thank you. Now, today's questions follow a fiery back and forth yesterday surrounding unanswered questions about Safe Streets hiring practices. Critics continue to question how Safe Streets workers are hired and why those workers' names aren't made public. Those employees are screened in coordination with the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, Baltimore Police, and those local nonprofits. Safe Streets employees are not city employees, but their salaries do come from the millions in taxpayer dollars nonprofits receive from the city. Fox 45 News pressed Mayor Scott about why his administration is keeping the names of those employees quiet.
But your city does redact the names.
Don't interrupt me. I didn't interrupt you. Don't interrupt me. We're not doing that today. Again, we cannot just willingly give out what is called HR information, people's employees information of folks who do not work for the city of Baltimore. I don't know why you can't comprehend that. We are not going to violate any rules and regulations. If we want to work with, if our partners want to share that information, they can share that information.
Well, the City Council will dig into the hiring practices of Safe Streets employees on Thursday during an oversight hearing with MONSE.
Fox 45 News has also been tracking violent crime data in the Bel Air Edison community since the FBI conducted a search warrant on that site in October. According to data from Baltimore Police, April 2023 started with 83 incidents. That jumped to 115 in July. In October, when the FBI showed up to the Safe Street site, there were 62 violent crimes reported. That number dropped to 49 in November, when the site was actually inactive. Last month, there were 62 crimes reported. As the City Council prepares to hold the hearing on Thursday, we will keep you updated as we learn more about these employees. For our full coverage on the Safe Streets program, head to foxbaltimore.com.
Back to Session 2024 coverage. For months, we've been telling you about the growing number of car thefts across the state. Now there's an effort to cut down on organized crime that can be responsible for recruiting teens and young kids.
Brad Bell from our sister station in Washington, D.C., live for us in Annapolis with more on this. Brad, good evening.
Yeah, good evening. No, you know, in large part because of our reporting, there has been a focus here in the State House on juvenile crime, right? Changing the juvenile justice reform laws to try to hold some more kids who do crime accountable. And a lot of that has been car theft and carjacking. Well, this new bill also aims to get at car theft and carjacking, but it goes after the adults who these lawmakers say are getting kids to do their crimes.
As carjacking and auto theft numbers have soared over the last few years, prosecutors
in the two most impacted jurisdictions, Baltimore City and Prince George's County, say they have seen trends. Much of the crime, they say, is being done by juveniles in groups, often at the direction of others.
Almost none of these crimes are done by one individual.
So what you're seeing is the adults are preying on the juveniles and have the juveniles there as well as part of the larger overall crew. Those individuals that are running around carjacking in groups 3, 4, 5 cars a night, and they ride around carjacking citizens, taking the cars then down to a chop shop.
And that, they say, is the definition of organized crime. And yet, State's Attorneys Ivan Bates of Baltimore and Aisha Braveboy of Prince George's say current law doesn't allow them to go after those who may be behind a carjacking but didn't actually hold the gun and do the crime. And so they're in Annapolis together lobbying for a bill which would expand definitions of organized crime to include, for instance, street gangs who steal cars and allow for tougher penalties for those involved.
We believe that this will provide a great deterrence for individuals who may choose to work in concert with others to wreak havoc throughout our state.
A similar bill failed in the legislature last year, but now Braveboy and Bates believe the senators and delegates have heard from enough constituents who want something done to protect their cars and themselves.
We think that perhaps the legislature will be maybe more open to it because now they understand that the prosecutors need more tools.
And so the bottom line here is the tool thereafter is about a 15-year sentence enhancement on top of an underlying crime if they get a conviction. Now, what is the need? Well, we looked into the current numbers right now. There is some encouraging news in Prince George's County where we're seeing that car theft is down about 25% this year, carjacking down about 20%. In Baltimore City, it is a very different story. We got some new numbers. There have been about 1,400 car thefts already this year. At this time last year, it was 800. That's why Mr. Bates said it's important to get this bill through. In Annapolis, Brad Bell, Fox 45 News.
Almost double, Brad. Thank you. Well, House Bill 1063 is not the only one Bates and Braveboy are pushing for. House Bill 555 calls on the Department of Juvenile Services to report any juvenile who violates GPS home monitoring within 24 hours of the violation to the state's attorney's office, the courts, and the defense counsel. They're also supporting House Bill 927, which calls on any juvenile charged with crimes of violence, gun-related crimes, or stolen auto crimes to be held and see a juvenile judge within 24 hours. This would include the state's attorney's office, DJS, the parent and defense counsel. Brad Bell was just talking about it as car thefts continue to skyrocket across the city. A shockingly low number of these crimes are actually being solved.
Fox 45's Rebecca Pryor takes a closer look at the number of cases being closed and why consequences are rare.
It's a crime shifting into high gear. In 2023, BPD recording more than 11,000 car thefts citywide. That's 30 cars stolen every day or more than one every hour.
Right here is where I was parked.
Some swiped in a matter of minutes.
That's crazy.
In broad daylight.
On my camera is two guys standing at my car.
And often stolen steps from the victim's front door.
They just drove off in the car.
But even with so many incidents caught on camera, criminals rarely facing any consequences. At a press conference addressing the rise in crime last November, BPD announcing nearly 700 auto theft arrests. At the time, 9,300 cars had been stolen for a clearance rate of just 7%. Meaning, if your car is stolen, there's a 93% chance of the thieves never being caught.
Generally speaking, I would say that these drivers who've stolen a vehicle or are in a possession of a stolen vehicle just simply flee from the police, and that's the end of it.
Former Deputy Commissioner Jason Johnson explaining it's a difficult crime to solve.
No matter how one feels about the BPD's pursuit policy, it does allow offenses like stolen vehicles to just drive away and not pull over and be apprehended.
And even when a rare arrest is made, legal expert Jeremy Eldridge.
It's very difficult to prove factually.
Explaining convictions are just as hard to secure.
Because you need a victim or a witness to come forward and say, I saw this person on this date at this time steal this car. and identify them in court.
This car theft victim,
There's blood all in the car. He burned the whole roof. I mean, the car's total.
who asked we not share her name, claiming a thief broke into her Canton home, stole the keys to her Range Rover, and sped off with the car in the middle of the night.
He drove my car for a month like it was his.
According to charging documents, a routine traffic stop leading police to make an arrest. The suspect found with a knife, prescription pills, and a plastic bag with a substance suspected to be cocaine. But when taken to court, the only guilty charge, unauthorized removal of a motor vehicle. The suspect sentenced to just over 2 months behind bars and 3 years probation.
I mean, I really couldn't believe it. I thought the charges would be like grand theft auto. I mean, the car was worth $50,000.
According to Eldridge and Johnson, the lack of accountability is likely what's driving the soaring crime rates.
They're just very difficult crimes to investigate, frankly, despite the lack of complexity in the crime itself.
There's no certainty of consequences. In fact, the likelihood of consequences are very low. So, of course, that's the problem.
As car thefts in Baltimore City continue to show no signs of slowing down. Rebecca Pryor, Fox 45 News.
That brings us to our question of the day. Do you think the city is making any progress with car theft? So far, 95% of those who voted say no. To make your voice heard, head to foxbaltimore.com/vote. After years of flooding disasters, leaders in Annapolis say enough. After the break, the plan in place to prevent future devastation at the state's capital. And yoga with bunnies, how one yoga studio is using the adorable animals to raise money for a good cause.
I'm in. Anything with bunnies, I'm in. That sounds awesome. I used to have a pet rabbit. I'll tell you about it later, Kai. It's looking pretty good this evening. Temperatures are going to be a little on the chilly side, but we're finally dry for an evening. That is not going to stay that way, though. And your weather headlines, it is going to be rainy the rest of the week for much of it, I should say. And we could have 2 inches of rain when all is said and done by Saturday. We'll talk about all that coming up.